Psychic Pokemon are awesome. Even as early as Kanto, they were a force to be reckoned with. I decided to attempt a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon X, using only Psychic, or soon-to-be, Psychic Pokemon. I chose this generation actually because of Delphox, but there are plenty of other Psychic Pokemon to catch in Kalos. Let's see how it goes. For this run, I go by the name Sabrina. Now, as an adult male, I may not know much about teenage girls, and I'd like to keep it that way. But I'm fairly certain they don't sleep with a purse like that. It seems a bit weird. Sabrina magically gets fully dressed just by looking in a mirror, as teenagers are all able to do. I've never played as Serena before, so it's weird seeing a hatless Calum standing outside waiting for me. Those two wrote me into their larger friend group, who immediately asked me what I want to be called. How about my name? I thought that was obvious. Yes, of course it fits me, it's my name. When it comes time to pick a starter, obviously none of them are currently psychic types, but I will allow myself to use Fennekin as is until he becomes one. Even though I just met this random group of dudes mere minutes ago, we all decide to go on a world trekking adventure because that's what you do with strangers. Shauna wants to try out our new Pokemon, but she picked poorly because Chespin is a sucker. Newton takes him out quite easily, leveling up, which actually isn't great for reasons that will be seen shortly. After stealing her money, I tell my mom that I'm running away from home with a bunch of strangers. Her response? Here's a town map so you don't get lost. Thanks for looking out, Mom. Some more tutorial stuff happens, and once I'm free, I can finally take out some Pokemon on Route 2. Seeing as how Newton is the only Pokemon I'll have for the first gym, I need to make him as strong as possible. This means I need to give him speed EVs. Thankfully, Route 2 is a great place to do just that. I honestly don't know if this is going to make much of a difference, but I hope so. After that training, it's time to face off against Viola. Now you might think a bug trainer should be easy to beat, but her Surskit is going to be an issue. I needed speed EVs to ensure that I outsped that thing. Newton starts off with an Ember, hoping for a burn, but to no avail. Surskit in turn uses Water Sport, weakening my fire moves dramatically. I then use Howl to boost attack and get hit by a really strong bubble. That's what I was afraid of. Scratch should now be a 2-hit KO, and thankfully, Surskit actually quick attacks instead of bubbles. That's another reason I wanted to outspeed, to maybe increase the chances of that. With 12 HP left, Newton defeats the first bug and levels up in preparation for Vivian. Because of my plus attack, I'm hoping she uses Harden on the first turn, and she does, while I stick with Scratch one last time because of the Water Sport. I would have loved a crit there, but oh well. Newton is crit instead with an Infestation, responds with a really strong Ember, thanks to Blaze, which would certainly now be a 2-hit KO, but at this HP, it's pretty unlikely Newton survives to get a second hit. After Infestation Chip and a Tackle, he is left with literally 1 HP, and he actually manages against all odds to win that fight. I'm kind of in awe right about now. I mean, there was a lot of luck involved, so I'm not bragging or anything, but I totally expected to have to redo this battle multiple times until it worked out in my favor. Now that I have a bug badge, I'm able to head to Route 4 where I find a Ralts. I hadn't actually decided if I wanted to use Gardevoir or Gallade, but I guess the game decided for me since only boy Ralts can be Gallades. In Lumio City, Professor Sycamore, who I have never met by the way, challenges me to a battle with the claim that he's not that tough. You know, he just has all 3 Kanto starters, no big deal. Actually, they are no big deal. Newton easily defeats Bulbasaur, Curie the Ralts takes out Squirtle, and Newton comes back out to scratch Charmander. I guess Sycamore was right. He sucked. Once again, I'm offered some starter Pokemon, but none of these will ever be Psychic, so that's a no from me, dog. I don't need no normies on my team, except for Newton. In preparation for a certain Water Star, I get a Water Stone because I'll need it eventually. Though eventually comes a lot later than I actually realized. As always, Lysandre is a creep preying on beautiful women, but only the young ones. Gross. On Route 5, I defeat Tierno and his single Corphish easily enough, and use Repels to avoid running into any wild Pokemon. That way, I can go a little bit farther, get an Ultra Ball in Camfriere Town, and then backtrack to Route 5, running around until I find an Abra. Since I don't have access to Mean Look or anything like that, I got this Ultra Ball to increase the chances of catching the Abra. But he breaks out and teleports away. Dang it, I thought I was so clever getting that Ultra Ball too. That is certainly disappointing, but on Route 6, I find and catch an Esper with a single Great Ball. I am then forced to pay $1,000 to enter this palace, which is likely how they stay so stinking rich. Obligatorily, is that a word? I help them find a Pokemon, even though I just gave them money. Basically, I paid them for the privilege of finding this Furfrou on their behalf. Doesn't make a ton of sense to me either. One angry Snorlax later, Caleb and I team up to defeat two of our random friends. It's weird that we haven't had an official rival battle yet, but don't worry, we'll more than make up for it later. In the connecting cave, I get another Pokemon in Meditite. I'm actually a really big Medicham fan, so this is a great encounter, as long as I can keep him alive enough to evolve. Then on Route 8, I avoid getting the most likely Spoink encounter here because I want to come back later for someone much better. I've got to say, I didn't actually realize there were so many Psychic types in between the first and second gyms in Kalos. I'm having way too many Pokemon to choose from. But we're not done yet. I also get a Lunatone in Glittering Cave. My recording didn't actually capture that encounter, but here he is on my team. Though it did capture Curie's evolution. I defeat some Flare Grunts for the first time, and save this Pokemon Paleontologist, who offers me some fossils. But neither of them are Psychic, so I really don't care. Okay, I still care. I choose Tyrunt, but I can't use him. In Sillage City, this nice lady really wants me to have a free bike, making up stupid lucky numbers, and basically feeding me the answers to her free bike quiz. And while getting to the level cap, Faraday the Esper evolves into the cool blue version. The blue, obviously, means he's a guy. Pokemon apparently conform to gender norms. But he, and most of my other Pokemon, need to go into the box to match Grant's team size. I lead with Meitner, the Meditite, who one-shots Amora with a 4 times effective Rock Smash. Now Tyrunt can take the hit, even a crit, and responds with a Rock Tomb to slow me down. Not wanting to lose Meitner here, I swap to Lyle, the Solrock, on a Hyper Potion. He has Bulldoze, which lowers Tyrunt's speed, forcing him to keep using Rock Tomb because the AI loves to try to outspeed. This would have worked well if Tyrunt hadn't immediately gotten a crit. I could potentially swap back to Meitner here, who should be able to take another Rock Tomb, but in the off chance he uses Bite or Takedown, I would lose him. Rather than take that risk, I just continue bulldozing a second time, sacrificing Lyle. His death lets Meitner come back out for one last Rock Smash. Having a death on the second gym isn't great, but I'm still kind of elated that I didn't have to redo the first gym several times, so I'll just go with it. And you should go with it and subscribe to the channel to get more Pokemon content like this one. On Route 10, I am on the lookout for Sigilif and instead get an Eevee. That was unexpected, but I'll take him. In Geosenge Town, a Flare Grunt disappears in midair. I wonder where he could have gone. Certainly not in this door that is poorly covered up by a rock. Oh well, I guess I'll never know. Korrina tries to beat me up on the way out of town, but her fighters, even though they're Steel type, stand no chance. On Route 11, it takes a bit of time, but eventually I find the Psychic type Chingling, a Pokemon I've used so little, I often think he's a Steel type. He totally should be though, right? He's like a bell. That leaves 4 possible Psychic encounters in Reflection Cave. I'm hoping for a Mr. Mime, or even a Wobbuffet would be great. Instead, I get Solosis. He's not necessarily a bad Pokemon, but oftentimes in my mind, slow equals bad, and even fully evolved, he has 30 base speed. So yeah, he's a bad Pokemon. And then I get a Slowpoke on Route 12. In preparation for the upcoming rival battle, Curie evolves into her final form, Gardevoir. Still doesn't have any fairy moves though. That kinda sucks. I don't like my strategy for this fight, but we'll see how it goes. Meitner starts off by detecting Meowstic's fake out, hits with a strength, and gets confused. Well, you were a lot of help there. I pivot into an Eviolite Newton who can tank anything this guy throws out, winning in a couple of turns with Fire Spin and Flame Charge. This brings out Frogadier, of course. Curie does manage to win with a Magical Leaf, but it's not a pretty sight, and she gets down way too low, just in time for Absol. I swap to Newton because he's a tank with Eviolite, and for whatever reason, Absol spams Quick Attack instead of using Bite or even Slash. That foolish move allows me to escape unscathed from a battle I probably shouldn't have. I'll do better next time. Or will I? If you were Psychic, you would know. Even after doing what they demanded of me, these guys still won't let me Mega Evolve. so it's time to beat some sense into Korrina once again. She starts with Mindfu, and I, Faraday. We both hit with Fake Out because I outspeed, but he can't get flinched. He then falls to a single Psyshock, as does Machoke. Howlucha takes a turn to hone his claws, survives the hit, and proceeds to heal twice before finally admitting defeat, using a weak flying press before dying. For this battle, you didn't need to be psychic to know how it was going to go, especially with her not using either Lucario. You have two of them for goodness sakes, just use one. Looks like she heard me, because in our next encounter, she uses exactly one, and I get the other. My non-psychic Pokemon wins that battle, because of course she does, and she begs me to take this dog, but I decline. There is no space on my team for non-psychics, except for Newton, and Schrodinger too, I suppose. Speaking of psychics, on this tiny tropical island, I end up getting some eggs instead of an Inkay. Hopefully that wasn't too bad a trade-off. And in Coumarine City, I get a fishing rod. Once I can fly, this will come in handy back on Route 8. For now, I throw some rocks at these eggs until they evolve. This takes me to yet another rival battle, though we almost literally just had one. But this time, I am slightly more prepared. Rutherford, the now evolved Executor, protects on Meowstic's Fake Out, and takes him out in 2 sets of Bullet Seeds. But first, the cat sets up Light Screen. I heal with Leftovers as Absol comes out. Basically, I'm going to protect and heal with Leftovers as much as I can, which ends up being a single turn because Bite was stupid strong, and my 2-hit Bullet Seed was just stupid. Okay, let's swap to Newton, who still has Eviolite, and recreate our battle from last time as Absol spams Quick Attack. You know what they say, Calum, if it doesn't work the first time, don't change anything and keep on trying in the exact same way. That's how physics works too, by the way. I do allow Rutherford another chance against Froakie after some healing with Leftovers, and he almost disappoints me with a confusion, but manages to get through it well enough. I know I said this last time, but for sure, the next rival battle will be better. Probably. Now Ramos doesn't have a team full of psychic type weaknesses, but he is weak to fire, so Newton can shine. This time he has a Metronome, and after tanking a fully powered Acrobatics from Jumpluff, hits with a Flame Charge. Next turn, Flame Charge is 20% stronger, thanks to the Metronome, ensuring it knocks him out, and he outspeeds thanks to that speed boost. Anticipating a Bulldoze from Go-Goat, I pivot to Rutherford, who again has Leftovers. This is a long and drawn-out battle, with me using Infestation to deal chip, and protecting virtually every chance I can, that way he gets to heal. Go-Goat is healed several times too, of course, and eventually, Rutherford needs to swap with Faraday. He defeats the Go-Goat with a Fake Out and Psyshock, and Weeping Bell immediately falls too. Meowstic is actually a pretty decent Pokemon. I'm somewhat surprised. Though being a boy, instead of a girl, will kind of come back to haunt me in a very minor way. With the ability to fly, I return to Route 8 and fish with a good rod to find my favorite water psychic, Staryu. Technically he's not psychic yet, but he becomes one with the rock I got all the way back in Lumio City. If you watched my last psychic-only Nuzlocke from 2 years ago, spoiler alert, Bernoulli the Starmie didn't quite make it to the end, dying in the final championship battle. But this time, I'm determined for this reincarnated jeweled starfish to make it. Not that he's much use in the upcoming electric battle. First, I defeat Team Flare at the power plant and meet the tallest man in existence. I then have a few evolutions, including Schrodinger the Eevee, and Newton, who finally becomes Psychic type. Clement starts with a Mulga, and I, a Metronome-wearing Schrodinger, who is now the very best Psychic Pokemon, Espeon. Schrodinger uses Echoed Voice, a move which starts at only 40 base power, but gains 40 power every time it's used. In addition, Metronome also boosts its power by 20% every turn. So the first hit was kind of weak, the second is now strong enough to finish off a Mulga. This brings out Magneton, who obviously resists Echoed Voice, but it's still knocked out in 2 hits and only sets up an electric terrain. By the time Heliolisk comes out, combining the boost of Echoed Voice with the Metronome results in what is effectively a 360 base power special move, which obviously one-shots the lizard guy no problem. That was a fantastic showing for your first battle, Schrodinger. Sycamore makes me question his judgment, vehemently defending Lysandre as a good man, in spite of, everything about him telling us the exact opposite. If only there were a way for someone to forewarn you of false friends and upcoming danger. You should look into that, Sycamore. Speaking of, Calum exemplifies both of those things. I lead with Schrödinger in an attempt to recreate his awesome echoed voice strat, but Meowstic uses Light Screen, and it ruins all my plans. He is still taken out, but Absol would not necessarily fall, so I bring out Meitner, who is promptly hit by a critical bite. Thankfully he outspeeds, even without the Quick Claw, and Force Palms. For Greninja, I pivot to Bernoulli on a quick attack, and he was totally supposed to know Thunderbolt. I just got that TM, and in my mind, I gave it to him, but apparently I forgot. Grass Knot is still better than nothing, and he wins in 3 turns. In preparation for Valerie, Mendel fully evolves into Rheoniclus. I admit I have never used one before, so maybe I should give him a chance. First, a Flameplate Newton has just enough power to one-shot Mauville with Flamethrower. Sylveon is a special defensive tank, but Psyshock does damage based on my opponent's defense, so he falls in just 2 hits. At this point it's clearly not necessary, but I did say I wanted to try out Mendel, so let's bring him out on the Mr. Mime, who immediately light screens, so I do likewise, and after a number of turns, I eventually decide to stop wasting my time and pivot back to Newton. That was certainly a waste. Mimey falls in a single flame charge after the swap. That wasn't a great showing for Mendel, but to be fair, he did only have psychic moves, so I guess I put him in a bad spot. But with the Dazzling Gleam TM, Curie can finally have a fairy move. It only took to level 42. For whatever reason, in X and Y, Ralts has a surprising lack of fairy moves, something that is fixed in Gen 6 Hoenn. I really wish I had Draining Kiss because I love that move. I don't, so time to give it up. Calum and I scare Team Magma away from the Pokeball Factory, and by that I mean I scare them away, and am offered either a Big Nugget or a Master Ball. Are you kidding? Those items aren't even close to comparable. I similarly scare them off in a snowy place, but that's enough of them. Let's have another rival battle. I swear, you have more rival fights in this game than any of the others. It's getting a bit out of hand. Newton starts off by getting fake outed, and then he and Meowstic trade Shadow Balls back and forth until Meowstic is a goner. This baits out Greninja as I pivot to Curie. She heals with Protect and Leftovers, which is necessary to help her survive the Water Shuriken, which still does a decent amount, but then he falls to Moonblast. Bernoulli comes out on Flareon's Bite, responding with a single Surf. For Absol, I once again pivot to Meitner, this time on a Night Slash, who finishes the battle with a Force Palm. Thankfully, this is the last rival battle until Victory Road. There are just way too many of them. Remember a few minutes ago when I was disappointed at the fact that my Meowstic was a boy instead of a girl? That's simply because girl Meowstics learn Shadow Ball naturally, while boys do not. And I don't have access to the Shadow Ball TM, so having a girl Meowstic would have made things a little bit easier. Oh well. Curie starts off by Moonblasting the Sigilif, who does exactly what I didn't want him to do, setting up Light Screen. Dang it, you're a jerk. This baits out an aforementioned girl's Meowstic. The Light Screen is not great for my plans, but we'll see how it goes. Curie starts with a Protect to heal with Leftovers, takes a Shadow Ball, and uses Torment to prevent Meowstic from using the same move twice in a row. In other words, Curie can protect every time Meowstic would use Shadow Ball. She starts to Calm Mind. That, coupled with Light Screen, means that Moonblast does basically nothing, so I need to wait out the screen using my own Calm Mind. Once it wears off, a couple of Moonblasts takes out Meowstic. With that plus special attack, I don't want to swap, and Slowking simply falls in a few hits after I prevent a yawn. Great job there, Curie. You did fantastic. Following our victory, Lysandre proves what I've been saying all along, that he is a messed up person. After all, he wants everyone to die. As a young teenager, the responsibility of saving the world inevitably falls onto my shoulders. Who else would do it? First, I need to find him. Using my psychic powers, I am able to put together these seemingly separate and useless pieces of information to locate Team Flare's hideout. That wasn't as hard as it seemed, and I encountered Lysandre at the front of his lab. But an expert belt Curie is able to outspeed and one-shot his first 3 Pokemon, no problem. It's not until Pyroar that she has a bit of an issue, getting outsped and burned. Newton can take a Fire Blast hit on the swap and uses Psychic to beat Lysandre for the first time. For the second time, his Pokemon have evolved, so it's quite a bit more intimidating. This means I bring out the big guns, Schrodinger. Now he has the Expert Belt to Psychic the Mienfoo. Pyroar gets a Fire Blast in, but it's not a big deal. Honchkrow falls to a Dazzling Gleam, leaving only Gyarados. Anticipating an Aqua Tail, Bernoulli comes out to take the hit and uses a Magnet-boosted Thunderbolt for the win. I have a very important question though. In those 5 minutes between our battles, how did two of Lysandre's Pokemon evolve so quickly? Was he just in the back, furiously training against other Team Flare members to get them to evolve, knowing I'd come back to beat him up again? Some legendary Pokemon breaks free and shows off its very intimidating sword feet. I get it. The antlers are huge, so you're probably not looking there, but don't skip leg day. Those things are sharp. I'm forced to capture this thing, because of reasons, and then Doc Ock Lysandre wants a third rematch in almost as many minutes. This time, I'm forced to leave with Xerneas for more reasons, but he is clearly not a Psychic type, so I just stalled with Gravity, allowing Mienshao to Swords Dance and Acrobatics a few times. Now my real strategy can start, Schrodinger. He still outspeeds to one-shot the Mienshao, but on Pyroar, I need to take the opportunity to Calm Mind a single time. With that special attack boost, the half-normal lion falls to a single Psychic. Honchkrow is overkilled by Dazzling Gleam, bringing out the Gyarados at the end, just like last time. But this time, he Mega Evolves, losing his Flying type, which means that Grass is now super effective. So an Expert Belted Grass Knot with that plus special attack is guaranteed to one-shot. And that was somehow easier than the last battle. So I win! And rather than live with my victory, Lysandre decides to blow himself up. It seems a bit extreme if you ask me, but I don't really care anymore. Let's just finish the gyms. In Terminus Cave, I spend an indeterminate amount of time on the lookout for another Psychic Pokemon, but this bat just doesn't want to jump me. Spiders do instead. After longer than I care to admit, I find a bat, and realize it's not the bat I was looking for. This is not the Psychic type Woobat. Now I feel like an idiot. It's time to beat up my friends so they too can be miserable. Starting with Shauna. Meitner takes out Delcatty with a single power-up punch, and thanks to that attack boost, Goodra falls to an Ice Punch. Chestnut survives the hit, he is a tank after all, but is frozen and remains unable to do anything. That was pretty great, actually. Unfortunately, she was the easy one. Tierno is a bit more difficult, especially with this bird. I pivot to Mendel, who is a bit tanky, and is immediately crit. He survives to hit a Pain Split, recover, and takes out this bird with Psychic. If Talonflame had gotten another crit, Mendel certainly would have died. This brings out Crawdaunt, so I pivot to Curie, the only one on my team not weak to Dark, besides Meitner I suppose. She still takes a lot, but one-shots with Moonblast. Last is Roserade, who literally only knows Petal Dance for whatever reason. Newton can take the hit, and he flamethrowers. After Tierno, we do get healed, but have to immediately battle our third and final friend, Trevor. He starts with a Raichu, who doesn't do too much with Thunderbolt, but static activates, paralyzing Meitner. I bring Newton back out to take a hit and outspeed with Flamethrower. Now Aerodactyl has Crunch, which I'm expecting him to use, so I swap into Meitner again to try and bait out a flying move, but he apparently just wants to confuse me. So let's try this again. Bernoulli is confused on the swap. I pivot to Mendel, who gets crunched. He is confused and does basically nothing to Aerodactyl, and then Meitner comes back out on a crunch, and at this HP, he has to go for his flying move, Skydrop, which finally is what happens. Aero takes Bernoulli into the sky, drops him down, and is surfed to death. That was a bit difficult, since Aerodactyl outsped, presumably, everyone on my team, but it worked out. Last is Florges, a special defensive tank. Newton uses several flamethrowers to deal some damage, before swapping to Curie, who finishes the battle with 2 more Moonblasts. Well, that was some intense battling. I brought along Mendel mostly as a sacrifice, in case I needed a safe swap, but I'm somewhat glad he didn't end up dead. Before I can battle the last gym, I realize I missed an encounter in Frost Cavern. I don't know how I skipped this one, because Jinx is pretty cool. And in the Pokemon Village, I get my last encounter, Gothorita. With that, I can challenge the final gym leader. Newton flamethrowers a Boomasnow like it's nothing, and the Avalugg as well. Cryogonal survives the hit because of his good special defense and confuses me. After a bit of time, and not hitting him very well, I eventually decide to swap to Meitner on an Ice Beam, who heals confusion with a Lumberry, and knocks out that Snowflake, winning me the last badge. With access to Waterfall, I can finally get the Psychic TM and give Bernoulli a Psychic attacking move. The Victory Road door in Kalos is pretty intense, and seemingly needs to be shut and reopened every time someone gets all 8 badges. That must be a lot of work. In Victory Road, I have an encounter with a Weavile that could go quite poorly, but Curie does an excellent job, taking him right out. That would suck to lose someone at the very first Victory Road trainer. Moving on to the second trainer, he has a Kangaskhan. I'm confident that Meitner can take him out with a Brick Break, but she can't, and falls to a Shadow Claw. Are you kidding me? Metacham was supposed to be on my Elite Four team. That's lame. I make it through Victory Road without any additional losses, and run into Calum. Rutherford the Executor starts off with a Protect, is hit by Shadow Ball, but uses Sunny Day. This activates Chlorophyll, letting her outspeed, and take out the cat with a single turn Solar Beam. The plan here was to bait out Flareon with that Sun, but for whatever reason, Calum sends out Greninja with a Dark Pulse. Honestly though, this is much better, because now Rutherford does not have to die. With that speed boost, he is likely the only one on my team who would outspeed this Ninja Frog, and with another Solar Beam, he does just that. Now this brings out Flareon, but with Greninja dead, I don't really have to worry about sacrificing anyone. Though I do decide to have a bit of fun, pivoting into Curie, who traces Flareon's Flash Fire, giving me a damageless swap. That was a pretty cool pivot if I do say so myself. And I just did. Flareon does use a Bite here, but falls in 2 Psychics. With Curie out, Altaria is immediately one-shot with Moonblast, as is Absol, who I always think should be faster than he is. But it works out better for me in this case. I am pleasantly surprised how smoothly that battle went, especially since nearly every member of his team had a super effective move against Psychic Pokemon. Before entering the Elite Four, I need to do some berry picking. Now I haven't played Pokémon X very much, so I didn't realize this, but to get berries, all you need to do is find a berry tree in the background and use a move like Blizzard to knock them out of the tree. Hodgkin can do that very effectively, so I do that a couple of times, looking for specific berries that I plan to use in the Elite Four, and now I am ready. Most of my team should not come as a surprise, but I have decided to bring along Mendel, who is once again a sacrifice if I need him to be. As always, since I can pick the Elite Four order, I start with the easiest one and enter the spooky Dragon Chamber. Drasna should not be an issue at all. Curie, with an Expert Belt, outspeeds to Psychic Dragalge. Altaria is similarly outsped and one-shot. Noivern is obviously faster, but her Air Slash was pathetic and she promptly dies. Last is Drudigan, but a single Moonblast defeats him too. That was almost too easy, Drasna. Give me a bit of a challenge. In the Blazing Chamber, I expect a similarly easy battle from Malva. I decide to start with Bernoulli for obvious reasons. Now he has the Expert Belt, and Pyroar never stood a chance. I am somewhat concerned about Chandelure surviving the hit, but I shouldn't have been, because he doesn't. Talonflame will outspeed of course, but he's pretty weak, so Brave Bird is nothing to worry about. The Fire Turtle similarly drowns to a Surf. Well, this is quite possibly the fastest Elite Four start I've ever had. I am somewhat nervous about the battle with Wickstrom in the Ironworks chamber, but we'll see how it goes. Newton begins the battle by setting up the Sun, as Klefki uses Spikes. If he used Torment, he could seriously derail my plans, but he chooses to not do that, and a Flamethrower knocks him out. Now Probopass has great defenses, so even with the Sun, he survives the hit. But I have a Charty Berry to reduce super effective rock damage, which does nothing since he uses Earth Power. Did the AI see my Charty Berry and opt for Earth Power instead of Power Gem in spite of a stab boost? Either way, it works out fine for me. Scizor is one awesome metal bug, but fire is not his friend. Last is Aegislash. Since he starts off in shield form, Flamethrower would only do about half his HP. Instead, Newton protects on a Shadow Claw, forcing him into his Blade form. Because the AI really doesn't know how to use Aegislash, he does not use King's Shield, and instead dies to a flamethrower. Looks like I shouldn't have been nervous about that battle either, it was simple. Last is Cybold in the awesome Flood Chamber. Now Rutherford is not particularly fast, but with the slight level advantage he has, he is able to outspeed Clawitzer and one-shot with a Metal Plate Energy Ball. This baits out Barbaracle with a quad effective X-Scissor. Newton can take the hit pretty well, responding with a Grass Knot. He baits out a Waterfall from Gyarados that Bernoulli can take no problem. His Expert Belt Thunderbolt one-shots the Water Snake. Last, Bernoulli faces off against a Bernoulli wannabe. But this guy doesn't even have a Thunderbolt, so there's no way I will lose. It turns out the real Bernoulli's Bolt is a one-shot here too. Wow, all those battles went really well. I don't want to jinx anything here, because I didn't bring her, but those were all so ridiculously easy. Let's see if Diantha in the Radiant Chamber can make this run worth my while. She starts off with Howlucha, and I, Schrödinger. Now Schrödinger is not the fastest Espeon you're ever gonna see, so I'm praying that he outspeeds that quick bird, which he does. Thank Arceus. Now Gourgeist sees the kill with a Phantom Force, allowing Schrödinger to hit with a full Expert Belted Shadow Ball, taking him out. I'm glad he didn't decide to deal chip damage with the priority Shadow Sneak instead. Tyrantrum doesn't have the best special defense, so Dazzling Gleam is more than enough. This brings out Aurorus. Now I'm fairly certain she is going to use Light Screen here. I hope she doesn't, because that will force my hand. Psychic is not a one-shot, and Diantha uses a Light Screen. Alright lady, you have brought this on yourself. Remember that. Now I have to stall and wait for the Light Screen to wear off, so naturally I start to spam Calm Mind. Blizzard doesn't do too much, but after 2 hits and 2 Calm Minds, a crit Blizzard would bypass my defense boosts and certainly take out Schrödinger. So the question is, do I risk it here at the very end? I stay in, use a 3rd Calm Mind, and Blizzard misses entirely. Next turn, Schrödinger Dazzling Gleams just for fun, timing it so the Light Screen wears off as Goodra comes out. Now this is not the plan I originally had against Goodra. I was going to swap into Curie, sacrifice her against the Mega Gardevoir, then both Newton and Bernoulli had Casset Berries to help them defeat that Mega Monstrosity. But now, with +3 special attack, that Goopy Dragon is easily one-shot with another Gleam. And Mega Gardevoir is outsped and falls to a single Shadow Ball. So, yeah, I did not anticipate Schrödinger sweeping Diantha all on his own, but obviously he had to do it because he's just that awesome. And that completes the run. Surprisingly, the most difficult part was not the Elite Four, it was the constant rival battles. Especially since he ended up with 2 Dark Pokemon and a Shadow Balling Meowstic. That was rough. Still, it all worked out okay, and I had an acceptable amount of losses. Though I am upset about that Metacham loss. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next region.